You shall not pass! Hey there, boys, girls, and squirrels. My name is Modstab, also known as Devin, and this is my wife.
Cheyenne, also known as Mrs. Stab, according to
the live stream chat. Okay, that's what they want. That's what they need. That's what they want. Yeah. Either way, welcome to the second episode of the Modscast. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about perfectionism. More specifically, we're probably going to be telling stories about living with a perfectionist because it's just practical to our life. So we're not just trying to make up crap out of nothingness. It's actually lived experiences that we have. And so, yeah, here we are. But before we do jump into that, I do want to say a couple things. If you guys are enjoying this series, feel free in the comment section down below to give us some ideas and things like that you would like to see us talk about or hear us talk about, or however you want to go about that. Also, remember there are links in the description for the community Discord. We do have some Patreon things down there where we're doing some exclusive giveaways. We also have, and more importantly for me, I'm going to be transitioning my gaming live streams and stuff like that over to Twitch pretty much exclusively. And so I would really love for you guys to go click on that link, hit the follow button, and join me in on those. It would just be a blasty blast. However, I'm going to drink some water, and my wife is going to get this thing started.
I sure am. So first I want to point out we have a new sticker on the laptop. And that's something...
You have to show them, get it real nice, nice and close. That's as close as I can get. It's
in case you couldn't tell,
we
are Ram fans.
I own one.
Yes, that is all we should say about it.
Yeah,
love it.
Someday we'll show it to you guys,
Maybe.
But that day is not today.
It is precious to us.
It is precious. All right.
It was our Valentine's Day gift to one another because we needed another vehicle.
Well, my car literally died, so there was that.
It was sad. It was sad.
It was sad, but it was also a joyous occasion because Devin got a new vehicle.
It matches our red theme.
It does. I like the color red, apparently. So
do I.
I like the band red. You guys should too.
Okay, so living with a perfectionist, we wanted to first talk about what does perfectionism mean? Because one thing that we realized as we were discussing this is, I'm making my mic move a lot. Sorry. We realized that there are a couple different types of perfectionism out there, and so we're probably going to end up this is driving me crazy. Speaking of perfectionism.
Just kind of relax. Just keep your hands off the table, baby girl.
But that's how I'm making sure that I actually talk in the microphone.
Or you could just talk in the microphone. You don't have to sit there and be robotic. You could, I grab the mic and I move it around and up and down. Yours doesn't work quite as well, but I have it set up so you can move it up and down. So if you want to sit back and relax, you can bring it towards you and up a little bit.
It helps me anchor myself.
Yeah. Okay. Now that we've solved technical difficulties, moving on.
So we're going to cover a couple different types of perfectionism. We both exhibit certain types of perfectionism.
Totally opposite types.
Opposite types.
Yeah, opposites attract, apparently. Even comes down to the most minute of details of perfectionism. So,
yeah. My
perfectionism's better. It's more perfect, some might say.
Okay.
Got him.
So anyway, Devin, I suppose it would be good to talk about, before we even start talking about the types of perfectionism, to talk about, is perfectionism, I think it gets a bit of a bad rap.
Is it good or bad?
Is it good or bad?
No.
And so I think that our short answer to that is that...
Both.
Is yes, both.
Yes, all the things. Well, I think when you think perfectionism, generally it's actually in a good light. When somebody says you're a perfectionist, that means you're very specific about getting things correct and right the first time through. And I think that's a good thing. Just on itself, I think that's a great thing, and it's a great place to start.
Can I tag on to that?
Absolutely.
Aiming for excellence is kind of the terminology that I like to use. At least that's where mine stems from. Mm-hmm. And when we get into talking about our different perfectionisms more specifically, we'll kind of give you the backstory on how we developed, I think, some of our perfectionistic qualities. But this whole idea of aiming for excellence, I think, is at the heart of where we're both at with ours. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess since we're kind of just a bandwagon off that and keep trudging ahead,
we have to talk about if it's bad. When it's bad.
We already talked. We'll get to that. We'll get to the stories. We'll get to the stories.
We said we were going to stick with our list. I just want you to know this is the second time we have recorded this podcast.
No, it's not. We're perfect. We're not perfectionists.
So I just want to point out, I'm going to hold you accountable.
All right. Okay. We're going to keep to the list, but before we do that,
I
need to explain why this is the second go, okay? A couple reasons. My wife was a salty little bastard last night, okay? She was a salty little bastard last night. There was no chemistry because she was in a bad mood. There's things going on with her life. She's a girl. Let's just put it that way. Also, okay, my camera died 3 times while we tried to record it, which is weird because I have it plugged into a power source, so I don't know what the issue is. Either way, trudging on, we talked about it can be good because it makes you really specific and anal about the little things so that you get them right. But it's bad for the very same reasons because you're very anal about the minute details. And before we get too...
I don't like the word anal.
Anal. We are very anal.
No.
The annals of history. Anyways, before we riff off of what outside of that makes it bad, we're going to have to start talking about our specific perfectionism because there are 2 different types of perfectionism and they show in 2 totally different ways.
Well, and we could probably make the argument, some might make the argument in the comments that there's actually more than just 2 types.
I'm sure, but there's 2 very popular types or very stereotypical types of perfectionism and how they manifest. Mm-hmm. Perfectionism in itself is the same thing, but they manifest a little differently. Okay. And I think since I'm the one that's being rambly and talking right now, I'm just going to segue right into it and talk about my perfectionism. So we talked about the concept throughout the week and specifically yesterday about the concept of you being a bottom-up perfectionist or a top-down perfectionist. I am a big-picture perfectionist, so I see the end goal, and I think, okay, that's what we want to do. And then I try to trickle down and figure out what are the steps to get there. And so that's what being a top-down perfectionist is, or a whole big-picture perfectionist. And I guess a great example of this would be we talked about how I go about content creation on YouTube. It's
okay. I don't think you're going to elbow me.
I know. It's going to be great.
I'm going to groom you.
But anyways, when it comes to content creation, I think big picture. I want there to be content, 6 days of the week. I want there to be live streams 3 days of the week. I want there to have fancy thumbnails, high click-through rates. I want all this to happen, and I start from, okay, well, I'm going to do all of this at once. And then all of a sudden, things start coming to light of okay, well, I have to get something stapled and locked down for how I do thumbnails to make the process faster. Well, I have to figure out what videos are going to come out on those days. I have to figure out what I'm going to stream. And all of this is fine and is great to focus on that stuff. But I found that I was so caught up in this is what I want the channel to look like if I have a full-time career out of it, that I didn't think about, okay, well, from the ground up, what do I need to do to make that happen? I just started and went gung-ho, and I had to go back through those steps and figure out, okay, well, I want to put a story-rich game 2 times a week. Okay, I want to have a competitive game, 1 or 2 times a week. I want to be able to have podcasts on Sundays. This is all stuff that I started doing everything and then slowly had to go back down the ladder and realize, well, these are the little pieces I need to get in line to make this happen. And that's one form of perfectionism. And I think it kind of ties in very closely to people who like to kind of procrastinate.
Can I?
Yeah, you can riff off it.
Riff off. That's been our term since last night's fiasco of a recording. So, from my perspective, this kind of perfectionism, how he likes to make sure that they're done well from that top down. And I'm actually reading a book right now called Grit. This keeps moving. Called Grit by Angela Duckworthy. It's actually you talked during my.
It's okay. Keep going.
Welcome
to podcasting.
Angela Duckworthy wrote a book called Grit, and it's actually a professional development reading that with this quarantine thing, some sort of way for teachers in my building to stay connected.
Sure.
And I'm really enjoying reading it. Grit you'll notice on our sticker, which side is it on? This side. It says grit plus grace, and like my principal's word for the year has been grit, and so when I saw this sticker, I actually sent a picture of it to her. So I'm like, hey, it's your word, and that's why I wanted to put it on my laptop. So shout out, Ashley, it's for you. But anyway, he exhibits like this approach from this book, like this idea of figuring out kind of your ultimate concern, or like this utmost goal that you have, like this goal, this desire, this drive, but you remain loyal to it over time. He definitely has that. And so in my mind, because he is so top goal oriented, you know, he stays very loyal and very consistent to what he wants to ultimately accomplish. He has such a good picture of that. And how that actually helps me is knowing that, oh yeah, like in many of my goals, I am on the other side. I am very much bottom up. I see all these details. And in my head, like I suppose one of the best examples would be like housework. I enjoy housework. I was raised.
It's disgusting.
Maybe enjoy is a strong term. I like the finished product, and so, but my energy goes more into the details, and I know that they're going to construct to build something that I'm proud of. How the perfectionism kind of enters his world is because he has that big goal. Sometimes he doesn't. He has to think harder. Don't obsess over the details. Yeah, you don't obsess over the details, but because you don't obsess over the details, you don't always take the details into account. Yes, and so things feel big, and things can feel overwhelming. And so what he ends up doing is, because he can't visualize those details, is he pushes things off until he can't push them off anymore.
Yeah, and before we get off topic, I do want to talk about like the idea of procrastination is still a perfectionist idea. You're working under the assumption that you won't ever get it perfect, so you always wait till the last minute and do it to the best of your ability in that last minute, so that you don't obsess over those details so much. A great example of this would be like writing an essay.
Time out. This is one area where I am a procrastinator, but only because actually there are things I procrastinate on, but this is one thing where I think you can exhibit procrastination without it being a perfectionist. Well, maybe. I don't know. Because
let me explain, and it will connect your thoughts.
No, I was trying to tie it back to myself.
She just likes to interrupt me because she's so humble.
On essay writing, but I'm a really good writer, so I think it might be. Anyways, it is a perfectionist thing.
Time out. Let me continue. It will fix your thought process.
Maybe.
You wait till the last minute to write an essay because you know if you do it a month ahead of time when you originally get it, you're going to obsess over those small details. Well, should I use the word the here? Or should I use a comma? Or should I not use a comma? Should I go into explanations? But it's in a much smaller scale. You have less time to do it. And so what happens, let's say you have a great essay, like right out of the gate. As a perfectionist, As a perfectionist, you are going to obsess over that essay every day until it's done, until it's due. You will 100%, because that's how I am. It comes down to the big pictures. You want the whole thing to come together. You will obsess about that until the day that essay is due. Whereas if you just do a really good essay and you know that your essays naturally come out decent, you'll wait till last minute, whether it's conscious or subconscious, you're doing that because you don't want to worry about obsessing over the small details of this essay every day for a month, instead of, oh, I got 2 days to finish it, slop up an essay and then send it out. And you're like, well, it is what it is. It's just gonna turn out the best that it can at this point. So I think that's a prime example of perfectionism showing itself in procrastination, because you don't want to sit there and obsess over the details every day for a month.
Which I think actually kind of comes down to, I know for me personally, I can't speak for other people, but for me, it's because I don't want to take the time to, it's not that I'm going to obsess and be stressed about it. There are other things that I want to do. And so maybe someday when I write like a doctorate thesis or a doctoral thesis, I'll probably approach things differently. Actually, I'm considering going into a master's program soon, and I'm sure I'm going to have to probably amend that tendency.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we should probably move on to the next thing. So we talked about your perfectionism.
Yep. Being a top-down.
Okay. Do you want to tear me apart now?
No, I talked about me. Now you talk about you, and I just get to interject my opinions like you did. Interject. I'll interject all the opinions.
Okay.
We'll pull no punches.
So
Prepare for death.
Make sure you say what the positives are about my type.
Okay. Well, the positives about mine are that they're mine and they belong to me, and I am the pinnacle of humanity. So there is that. But also, I think before we migrate to that, we didn't really talk too much about the positives of mine.
I mentioned them a little bit, but yeah,
I think
talk a little more about that.
It really manifests itself in being a visionary.
Yes,
a lot of visionaries tend to have that top-down mentality when it comes to perfectionism. What's the end picture? What's the end goal? And they do their best to make it happen. And where I think those types of perfectionists can improve is bringing people on board that are
more detail-oriented.
Yeah. More specifically, to kind of relate to what we're talking about, a bottom-up perfectionist, which, beautiful segue into my wife's turn now.
Yes, I am very much that.
Look at me go.
Good job. That was very nice.
You could tell I do this a lot.
Well done. Good job.
Perfect.
So I think that we already talked about how I'm like bottom up. Like I'm very detail oriented, and that's not to say that I'm perfect with the details. Like I tell you what, in my job, I work as a music teacher.
I was waiting for you to notice it. I was waiting for you to notice it. Anyways, continue. Talk.
Oh, no.
Talk and pour.
You lost your chance.
Multitask.
No.
She can't multitask. She's a woman and she can't multitask. Okay, anyways.
I can
Bottom up perfectionist. Let's do this.
We ran out of water. That's so sad. Okay. In my job, I work as a music teacher, and if you are familiar at all with music programs, they require a lot of planning and a lot of time and effort to facilitate performances, to facilitate fundraisers, to facilitate events. And so you have to be somewhat detail-oriented to even be able to do that job.
I would agree.
Yeah. So that being
Very
said, that's
detail-oriented.
very much kind of shaped my professional life over the last 6 years. And
I mean, we're talking about somebody who has done school like their entire existence, basically. So you're going to be reflective of that,
That is true as well. The world of academia.
So
with a music program, one of the most helpful things has been that I work very closely with the band director. I'm choral in general music, and it's so nice when you have somebody come on board who maintains big picture but also knows how to get nitty-gritty with the details. And I've been very blessed to have coworkers who do that. And so when you talk about bringing a team in, I would say that my current coworker, actually both of my band coworkers I've worked with have been very big picture, but they've been able to jump into the details, whereas I'm able to work alongside them and really be like, okay, these are the details we need to absolutely make sure that we cover. It's worked out so well, and I thank God for that, because it could be really, really, really hard if you don't have big picture people with you. So I love big picture people.
Well, and I mean, I guess to kind of talk about that real quick is, if you don't have those things set in stone, like anything will become like this overblown process of like, if you don't know what the details are, like you talked about with me, the thing is going to seem huge. It's going to feel impossible to complete all the tasks. And especially more so when you're in charge of the development and learning of somebody else besides you. So I feel like everything is like on a magnifying glass or magnified when you're talking of like education, because it does very specifically involve other people.
Yes. Thank you. It can be quite a task. So I guess one of the things that
she's trying to dust the table. Perfectionism at its finest.
Okay,
the small
I'm
details.
aiming for excellence.
Bottom up perfectionist. Let me get this little dust bunny off the table. Ooh.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to segue into where I think my desire for excellence stemmed. Because I think that this is, we talked about stories. We discovered last night that using stories to connect us
together is a much better tack than trying to just talk about these abstract ideas, because frankly it did not work last night when we tried to do this. And before we continue, like, this was a hard topic. Like, I thought it was going to be easy. We were just going to riff off like we did the first one, you know, like just keep talking and having a good time, and one will feed into the next and the next and the next. But it's such an abstract topic. And not to mention, it's something that's so deeply personal to people. It's like that idea of achieving excellence or being perfect at something. Everybody wants to be right all the time. Nobody wants to be wrong. They just don't. And as a perfectionist, the best thing you can do is learn that you're wrong. So it's like, this is it's a hard topic. Yeah. It really is. Yeah. So I think where mine came from, and I'm going to call it, again, that aiming for excellence, because I think that because perfectionism has this stigma, I kind of want to avoid that term for now. So I grew up in a really wonderful, functional, loving family. And so I just want to preface that. I am so blessed with the background that I've had. Mm-hmm. So I'll preface with that. And one thing that I've really come to appreciate over time is that I am the oldest girl of 4 total siblings. Sorry. Mm-hmm. And she's got the personality to match, too. I do. And so y'all who are oldest girls, or maybe even just oldest children in general, like there's a certain weight you carry. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say my parents pressured me. They did. They held me to a high standard. They didn't pressure you. They just expected you to act like a functional human being. Yeah. But I'm one of those people, as my husband can attest, I'm also a person of extremes. And so I think gosh. We'll get into that some other time, but I'm grumbling like my dog grumbles. Growing up, I always had this responsibility that my siblings were watching what I did, especially my youngest 2 siblings. You know, they were, you know, I was a role model for them, and so I went through my childhood, and I've gone through much of my adulthood so far with this understanding that, you know, they're watching me, and you know, they're adults now themselves, but you know, they still respect me as somebody who's older, you know, and so I suppose that I've always carried with me is this responsibility to make sure that I don't want to living the perfect life. No, well, behaving in such a way that, you know, I'm proud for them to emulate. Not that they're going to necessarily now, but especially growing up, that habit that was ingrained in me. Yeah. You know, that's something that I'm just probably always going to carry with me to an extent. Yeah. So, and I should also mention, my parents are both prior military as well, and that's right. So that definitely factors in. My dad was a gunner. Respect to the military folks, okay? Yes. My dad is prior gunnery sergeant with the Marine Corps, and my mom was Navy. They actually met in Cuba. Actually, that would be a really cool. That'd be a fun story. We'll have to have them on the podcast sometime. Like, if you can get them to do it, they like their privacy. It would be an amazing podcast if we can get them on here for anything. Oh, it would be amazing. Anyways, I digress. Oh man, it would be great. Visionary, the big top down, okay? Yeah. We should get all these people on the podcast. You've only made 1 podcast so far. You know, okay. So anyway, that's where mine stems from, and I think I tend, because I am a person of extremes, you know, I've always wanted things to be good and right. And so anyway, so the perfectionism showcases that when I lose sight of that which is actually the most important in life, which is maintaining and investing in relationships. Like that when your desire for excellence begins to overshadow putting other people first, I think that when it becomes super self-centered, or it becomes being perfect for the sake of being perfect, which can be so easy to fall into as a music person and just as a person. As a person in general, yeah. Yeah. When I think a couple really cool things to kind of bandwagon off of with that is this idea of I'm going to be right, screw the consequences, screw the friends, the family, or things like that all offend or hurt or lose. I know we talked about this in the first episode, but that was one of the hardest things I had to learn was even if I am 100% right, sometimes I don't need to force that kind of battle, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so I thought of the concept the other day of the perfect response, the right response, and then the wrong response as a perfectionist. The perfect response is to have the right answer. Like in that example where let's say we were arguing, it could be something as stupid as like the weight of a table, you know?
Oh.
Like, because we kind of have one of these this morning, and I was trying to, what's the numbers? Where's the numbers? Give me the numbers.
Can we preface what this is
Jesus
from?
flipped tables,
Jesus
and he was a
flipped
beast.
tables.
He was a beast. He was a
That's-
man's man. He was a carpenter.
That's what we were talking about.
Anyways, a great example of this would be the perfect response is this table weighed, let's say, 200 pounds, right? But, well, let's say she was like, well, no, it's 150. Well, she could very well be right. But I could also be right because it was stone tables, you know what I mean? So the perfect response would be like, no, it's actually 197.5 kilograms cubed. You know what I mean? Like have the tiny little minute details.
Precise.
But the right response would be, okay, I mean, you're probably right. It could be 150 pounds because that puts the relationship first. The wrong response would be like, no, I think it's 10 pounds and you're an idiot. You know, but obviously those numbers don't check out. They're just arbitrary numbers to get the example across. But the perfect response is to have the 100% empirically right answer. The right response would be, okay, you know, maybe you're right. It very possibly could weigh that in putting the relationship first. Yeah. I think that's really, really important.
That was beautifully put.
I know. I tried. I do my best. Thank you.
Beautiful man.
Tell me something I don't know. Get him.
I think that this kind of goes nicely into one of our final bullet points here is like, what have we learned about
perfection as a whole?
Well, I think that we need to. I think we need to kind of back up. Like it's not so much what have we learned about perfectionists because I feel like we've been talking about that as we've gone.
That's fair enough.
But what have we learned about the importance of relationships with your desire for excellence and that balance that you have to strike, because that gets to like when is aiming for excellence a good thing and when can it become like an idol in your life that supersedes your relationships and that, you know.
That's fair enough.
So basically I think what it comes down to is if your desire for excellence is, like you said, superseding or overshadowing or more important to you than the person that you're interacting with, I think that's a pretty good sign that you're being selfish.
Yeah, you need to step back a little bit, yeah.
And it's not to say that every single example where that happens is the case. For example, we just had kind of a moment, a tumultuous moment in our marriage. We have those every once in a while.
It's mostly her fault, because I'm perfect.
Neither of us are.
I'm going to keep banging that drum. I'm perfect. Okay, anyways,
you're a beautiful man.
Continue.
You're a beautiful man, and my hands are cold and your face is
warm. They are, and they're very cold. Now continue your your tirade.
My tirade. So we had a blowout, a tumultuous moment. I shouldn't say a blowout because we try not to raise our voice at each other.
We don't really have.
Yeah, we try not to do that.
I don't think I've ever had to like raise my voice at you ever.
I don't think so.
I get stern, but I don't ever like.
Yeah.
Hey, you idiot over there!
No, I
don't go like Gandalf on you. You shall not pass. Oh, so good. Anyways.
I think you need to clip that from the very beginning.
Anyways.
As somebody, like I said, who, you know, appreciates the end result of doing housework, one of my things in my heart is when
it's okay, Rick,
the dog part is when there are dishes not done and not, you know, and when they're there in the morning, and it was trained into me from the age of the dawn of my existence that going to bed with a dirty kitchen isn't the best way to go. So waking up to a clean kitchen is a beautiful thing.
And before we continue, I absolutely wholeheartedly agree. I just sometimes, like, because I'm like the visionary, the big picture thing is like, I'm not running into anything. I'm not stumbling over anything. There's no like tripping hazards. Like, my house is clean. You know what I mean? I don't pay attention to those things until I'm in the moment. So like, let's say I cook. You know, when I cook, I clean as I go because I realize
that very well.
Because I realize like there's going to be a lot of dishes. So back to the big picture, you know, like I just do it as I go. So that way, when I'm done, I'm done.
I think you have a tendency, which is funny because I have this tendency to just look at what's right in front of me when I'm in a task. But you have to like I was trained, okay, now you look at what else needs to be done. And I've taken for granted for so long that that's the way I was raised.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that he wasn't raised to take care of things.
Well, and what's funny is my grandma raised me very similar to the way your parents, like my grandma and grandpa raised me very similar to the way your parents raised you. Like, so I grew up knowing that there was a specific, when you're doing that task, make sure everything involving that task gets done. It's just because I get so caught up in the big picture of like at the end of the night, like I want to be able to sit down and relax and watch anime or a movie or something with you. And I get so caught up in like, okay, what's the fastest path to get to that? Back to the whole visionary thing and not obsessing over the details to get there. I just like, okay, there's no dishes. The dishes aren't overflowing. You know, they're on the counter, but they're not overflowing. There's no big giant dog fluff bunnies tumbleweeding across the thing like in the desert.
Ones that you can see.
Right?
Ones that you can see.
Yeah. But like, I see that and I'm like, okay, that's good enough for me to be able to get to the end of the picture and watch an anime or something at the end of the night, because like that's some of my favorite moments is being able to just sit down and be like,
oh, you know what would be a good future topic?
Love
languages.
Oh, that would be a good one. We should take those tests on air.
Ooh, that would be so cool.
That would be
fun.
We'll
move on to that later. Our timer is about running out. We made sure we set a timer.
To keep on task
yeah. So for, that whole big picture thing, I guess I never fully realized that was one of his reasons. But anyway, we talked about how, mine is like, well, why can't you like train yourself to see what needs to be done? And he frankly was like, it's just, like, he didn't tell me it would never happen. Well,
that's just not how it works for me.
Well,
I have to try hard.
He has to try hard. It does not come naturally. So I mean, it's not that he didn't deny to me in that moment that he would like. He didn't say, I'm not going to try to do that for you.
Yeah.
He didn't promise me that he would do that for me, but he did tell me, he's like, Cheyenne, when have I ever told you no when you asked me for help with something? And so for me, there's our timer.
Just stop that thing. Get it out of here. Hey.
Hi, Rue.
Come here.
It's okay. It's
Rue.
okay.
Rue.
Will you sit?
Sit.
Excuse me. Please sit. Thank you.
We had to say the P word.
Thank you.
I didn't realize that had a beeper.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I knew it did.
I hate it.
I'm sorry. Hopefully your audio wasn't cranked too much in your headphones. Oh, anyway. So he told me, like, I've never told you no. And so for me, it's one of those things where I have to learn how to not be the martyr about it. Like, I have to learn how to humble myself and ask for help. A list. He's never told me, if you write it on a list, I'm not going to do it. Like, I married well. Okay. He's willing to help me, and he has affirmed to me many times over the course of our marriage, it's not nagging if you just ask me. And
not be an a-hole about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You stupid idiot. Why don't you ever do your list? Like, that's not going to go over very well.
And I've never said that, for the record. But I think, like, kind of to review last week's, if you haven't watched the first one, you would learn a heck of a lot about us.
Yeah. Oh, good Lord.
Essentially, one of our big commitments to each other is that, come what may, we're in this for the long haul and we're together. And so there's a certain freedom and a certain safety net.
Sure.
Knowing that neither of us are going to go anywhere no matter how frustrated we are with each other. And so that, that also helps us be like, okay, I shouldn't take this precious person for granted. And I need to find a way. We need to find a way. Yeah. So I just want to encourage you, if you are somebody out there who maybe you're really struggling in a relationship, marriage, just be honest. Be honest with each other.
It helps a lot.
Agree to just get things out in the light, but make sure you do it in a way that's
just respectful.
And just, you're gonna have to humble yourself at some point. Like, it is what it is. I think, so
to kind of, before we get too far off topic, I do want to kind of reel it back and talk about, you talked about what we've learned about, like, yourself, or myself as individuals. Like, what have we learned with our perfectionism? One thing that I want to talk about that I personally have come to learn, and you've come to learn about perfectionism, especially in the context of being, married to somebody and you're close, you're next to them all the time. since I am such a visionary, what I need to do is, we've talked about this a little bit in the beginning, is get people behind me that do work from the bottom up. So we meet kind of in the middle, as cheesy and corny as that sounds. Because I'm such a visionary, this is the big picture. She can come along and say, well, before we can do this, we have to do this, that, and the other thing in this order. And so I think what I've learned as well is, although I've learned to operate by myself and work under the visionary, the top-down perfectionist, you have to have those bottom-up perfectionists as well come alongside you, because they'll help you complete that. And a lot of people talk about this just in the context of work in general. Like, if you're managing and you know what needs to get done, you have to bring along those people that are going to obsess over those little details, like sweeping or mopping or painting or whatever it is, to get this building up and running and as clean as it can for store open. And so I think, like, you don't hear it attached to perfectionism very often when you say it works from the top down or the bottom up. And I think it's important to realize that that is very much so perfectionism, just from two opposite ends of the spectrum, and you need to merge those two together to make quote-unquote perfectionism work as clean and smoothly as possible.
And I think it's interesting how we're talking about perfectionism as an entity in and of itself.
Yeah.
I think perhaps it might be, might be presumptuous of us to do that a little bit.
Nah.
But, I mean, whatever.
I don't
That's
care.
the perfectionist in me.
I presume a lot of things, and it's okay.
Okay. I suppose at this point it would probably be good for us to kind of wrap up and...
yeah, I guess kind of put the nail in the coffin, so to speak.
That's so morbid.
It's good. It's the way I like it.
Why?
Nice and dark.
I don't like that.
Put the nail in the coffin.
No.
Put the dog in the coffin.
No!
And I got her going, and I win.
I think the cherry on top. Can we be positive, please?
The cherry in the coffin.
No! Okay, moving on.
I love it.
Our timer went off.
Anyways, once again, let us know what you guys want to hear in the comment section down below, because we can come up with stuff every week to talk about, and we absolutely will. But we also want to be mindful that you guys maybe have topics or questions that you want to specifically ask us that you may want us to either answer or just get our opinions on, and we would love to be able to do that. So let us know in the comment section down below what you want to hear us talk about, and that could be a future topic.
Make sure you keep it family friendly, please and thank you.
A dirty and disgusting, morbid cherries in the coffins. Either way, yeah, please throw something down in there and we'll talk about it. However, before we move on, next podcast is...
Next Modscast.
Modscast. I'm sorry. Modscast.
Details.
Is...
parents to a fur baby.
And I want to specify that this is more so going to be crazy stories that we've learned being a pet owner, as well as crazy stories that she's done that just blew our mind, okay? So that's going to be the premise of it.
Probably no, it's the eye of the beholder, but it'll be fun. Crazy. It'll be fun. We love our dog, and she brings us joy.
We're going to tell stories from the most depressing lowest of the lows to the highest of the highs. And yes, it happens when you're a dog owner. It'll be good. It's brutal, but I love it. Either way, thank you guys so much for joining us in episode 2 of the Modscast. Yes. And if you've made it this far and you are not a member, hit the subscribe button. Hit the subscribe button, because we'd love to have you join us and keep up to date on all the beautiful things we do on this channel, which, by the way, every Sunday through Friday, there's something being uploaded on this channel. So we'd love to see you guys stay updated. Mm-hmm. If you are subscribed and you
haven't clicked the bell notification icon, then you should do that
right freaking now. Okay, you screw off and hit the button, please. I just need you to hit the button, okay?
Language.
I will be less prone to bursts of rage, frothing right. Go ahead and hit the bell notification icon, because it'll keep you updated when we upload content. And there's no better way to stay updated than to get a notification, so you don't actually have to check our page every single day.
Well, that's what
or you could just check our page every day. But
okay. No.
that's how it is. Either way, check out the Twitch, the Patreon, the donation links, the Discord links on the description. Remember, we love you guys. I'm going to shove a filthy little cake hole. And we will see you next time. Toodles!